Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January 26th, 2021 meeting of the Foxborough. This is, I believe, our first all virtual meeting in quite some time. So before we get started, I would like to acknowledge that we did have 3 submissions into our community inbox that we want to acknowledge. The first one came from Barbara Pacini of 11 Alden Street. We also received an email from Jennifer Keene of 17 Windsor Drive. And we received an email from Carrie Weston of 7 Judge Brown Lane. So thank you for the submissions, and we appreciate your contributions to our minutes this evening. Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes from our last meeting. Did anybody have any questions or comments or modifications to those minutes? Tina?
On page 2, if my recollection is up at the top, the very first paragraph says who was there and who was not there. I don't believe Coach Gibbs was with us at our last meeting. That's my recollection. If I'm wrong, please correct me. But I think the last sentence should just say that, wellness instructor, Mr. John Gibbs, and family consumer science teacher, Ms. Christian Facera, were unable to attend the meeting. That's my only correction, to the minutes. Otherwise, I think they look great.
Thank you. Michelle, did you have any changes to any modifications to the minutes?
No, I did not.
Okay. So because it is just the 3 of us so far this evening, I know Mr. Pearson was detained with a personal situation. So do we have a motion to approve the minutes with the modifications that Tina recommended, or do we want to postpone voting on these minutes?
Michelle? I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended tonight.
Okay, thank you. So moved. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. So we do have to do a roll call vote because we are all virtual. So we'll just start with Michelle. So Michelle, how are you voting to approve?
Approve.
Thank you. And Tina?
Aye.
Thank you. And I will also approve these minutes. So the minutes from the, I should have the date in front of me, sorry, from the January 12th meeting are approved with 3 for and no against. So thank you very much. Now, as we move on to our next agenda item, I'm actually going to turn it over to Dr. Burdos for an introduction for this agenda item. We're going to give an update on some of the COVID-19 related items on our agenda.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. So I'm happy that we have Deputy Chief Tom Kinven with us this evening, and also Jen Rosenberg, our nurse leader. So we have pooled testing on the agenda this evening. And first, let me just start off. What is pooled testing? And that is a mitigation strategy by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. We know that we've talked a lot about social distancing and wearing masks and hand washing and not coming to school when sick. Those are all mitigation strategies to be able to keep our students in schools. And this next mitigation strategy is something that the Department of Ed has put forward to districts that can voluntarily participate in. What it is a screening of surveillance testing using a pooled strategy in a school setting where you're testing staff and students for the COVID-19 virus. It's a test that is performed or administered, I should say, through a nasal swab. It would be administered weekly. It's something, again, that would be voluntary. And the idea behind it is that you would take a pool of students and staff and administer this test. And it would be administered to detect whether the virus is present in a random sample of students and staff. And then after that test was administered, the results would come back in 24 to 48 hours after sending those results out. And then if the pooled test of that group of students and staff were negative, then everyone would be presumed to be negative within that group and could continue and remain in school. If the sample that was taken, if there was anyone that came out with a positive result, then additional testing would have to be done to determine who within that sampling was actually positive. The Department of Ed has put this forward to districts as a mitigation strategy in which they would be funding for the first 6 weeks of this. We've been meeting with our local health officials and then within the district here to talk about what that would look like, the implications of such testing, and at the same time, what are all of the complexities that go along with that? And then most importantly, what are we already doing within the district to be able to mitigate the virus and not have transmission within the schools, and importantly, be able to keep our students in school, which I will say, as I have always said at every school committee meeting, I continue to be so happy every day that we have students in school and that we've not had to go out fully remote. And that really is to the hard work of our families and to our students and our staff in doing what they need to do in order to stay in school, because we've heard loud and clear that they want to be in person in school as much as possible. But this strategy by the Department of Education that they've put forward is for districts to be able to have test kits, training, testing software that would then be provided to us free of cost for 6 weeks. And then it would go out to a third-party vendor. The tests are analyzed within a lab and then they come back to us. So we've talked a lot about what this actually would mean. Is it really free? What are the ramifications and the resources and funding, and when it comes to our ability to have something like this in schools, and more importantly, what's the need based on our current prevalence rate here in Foxborough? So that's why we have Deputy Chief Tom Kinven with us and Nurse Leader Jen Rosenberg to be able to provide some additional information about this, and importantly, our current thinking as the Department of Education has stated that they see this as something where you're using existing staff resources. Well, then what would that look like? At the same time, once the testing and the supplies, et cetera, went away, that was funded by the Department of Education after 6 weeks, they then said that you could use federal funds, which in our case, it's the CARES Act money that would be coming in. The second wave of that, it is the money is coming from the ESSER grant for us, which would be more than what we received in the fall. So those would be available funds that the Department of Education has said that districts would be able to use. It would be an allowable expenditure for those funds. We'll talk a little bit about how we're already anticipating the use of those funds, how we've used the current funds underneath the CARES Act, and what that would mean for us as far as also our own capacity, and then what this would yield for us. So I will turn it over here to Jen Rosenberg and Deputy Chief Tom Kinven to give you a little bit more of the science behind it and the data. And we've all been participating in webinars from the Department of Ed, et cetera. And I will also just start off by saying we continue to be so thankful for the Foxborough Fire Department and what we've been able to do with current testing within the schools already. We really do have a really good position where we've talked about our rates in the schools. We've been able to make sure that the evidence is not shown that we've had transmission in the schools. And when we have had positive cases and needed to have testing, for instance, with some of our sports teams, we've been able to do that in partnership with the Foxborough Fire Department. So Jen, I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you give a little bit more background and more of the scientific information behind it.
Sure, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Burdos, for that comprehensive explanation of the pool testing. That was really thorough. And like you said, we have had discussions about this that is being offered by the state. And, like with anything that's being put in front of us, we're going to make a list of the pros and cons and how is this going to benefit our community and what does our community look like at this point. Again, anything that's free, is it really free? I think we have to look at that. It's free for the first 6 weeks. And then, like Dr. Burdos has just said, after that, we would incur the cost of that, which is a significant amount of money. I was able to listen to a webinar a couple of weeks ago on the pool testing, and they had 3 districts that were presenting that have been doing the pool testing. And their districts just look a lot different than ours. So they've been doing it from the beginning, so they know no different. I think one of the big things that we have talked about is our transmission rate in the school and how we're just not seeing it. So a benefit to pool testing is try to find those asymptomatic carriers. And when you do a pool testing, it's done in batch testing, like Dr. Burdos explained. So you would have a pool of 10 to 25 people. And if one of those batches come back positive, you would have to do a little reflex testing on all those individuals to find out who is actually the positive individual in that batch. So again, that's time, that's money. We talk about not wanting students to lose time in school. Well, if they were in a batch that was positive, we would have to bring them all back and they would have to quarantine until we found out who the individual was. With that being said, the asymptomatic carrier, in addition to everything that we're doing in the schools, the hand washing, the staying home when you're sick, I can't say enough about the parents and the families of Foxborough reaching out to our nurses. I mean, our nurses are on the phone all day long. I've said this before, on the weekends, in the evenings, they're talking to parents. And that's because the parents are being transparent. They're not sending their kids to school sick, because if they were, we would see more transmission in the school. I mean, this came up when they were offering the antigen testing to us. And we were a little leery about accepting it because we didn't want that as a crutch for people to say, oh, they can go to school because they're going to get tested at school. You know, Tom and I say this all the time. A test is just a snapshot in time. You can be negative on Monday morning. When those results come back two days later, you can develop symptoms and be positive. We don't want people just to rely on that test data, because you have to look at the symptomology also. I've talked to a nurse in another district that they're rolling out this pool testing. They have not started yet. And it is not mandatory. So that's another, I think, con. So if they have a district of 6,000 people, only 1,400 people have signed up. You're only getting data from 1,400 people in a pool of 6,000. So what is that really telling you? I don't know if that's, we talk about the time that this is going to take, the time out of the class. Dr. Burdos and I actually talked today. Before you can get like a smooth transition with this, these kids it's going to take time to swab them. That's time out of class. They're only in school for the secondary classes are only in school 2 days a week. You're gonna be about 15 minutes out of class at the beginning. And is that really worth it? We always talk about what's the end game for this. Like what do we wanna get out of it? And if it was to get the kids in school more, absolutely. But I think if it's just to find that asymptomatic person in a group, because we're not seeing that transmission in the school, I personally, and after talking to a lot of people about this, I don't know if it makes sense for us at this time in Foxborough. We're halfway there. I looked at the calendar, and we've made it. We've made it halfway there, and I feel like our numbers are kind of on the downtrend. Tom could attest to this as far as the prevalence rate in Foxborough. I know we've been in the red for the last few weeks, but I feel like we might be on the downtrend. Tom, do you think hopeful?
We hope. It's true. We are trending on the downslide a little bit. So, I think one of the most encouraging things we've seen so far is, even though some of the case counts have been up over the last holiday season, I think locally we haven't seen the acuity in terms of hospital admissions. We do have the admissions, but you're not seeing the ICU beds that we saw in the first wave of the pandemic. So that's really, really great. I just want to point out that the only reason we're having this conversation right now is because of the efficiency and the tenacity of the nursing staff in the schools. They have been extremely diligent in their contact tracing, making notifications, and being very responsive and giving recommendations and guidance, especially as it directs towards testing and medical follow-up. So they have been phenomenal. And I think that's really the crux of where we're at right now. You have a very effective team in place right now with your nurses. And we are been able to access, as a collaboration between the nurses, ourselves, and the Broad Institute, access to very quick turnaround PCR tests. One of the things about the antigen tests that came up a lot in public health, especially in the early parts of the pandemic, as we were looking for sources of testing, was that the antigen tests weren't as accurate as the PCR tests. So as you roll into this, again, you're going to have your false positives, your false negatives, and you're going to have these issues that require PCR backup. So even if we do some of this testing, there's also that element that needs to be considered. How is that provided? What are the costs associated with that? And what are the extra exposures that occurred secondary to that lapse between getting an AG test or an antigen test and that PCR test? I can't say it any better than Dr. Burrows and Jen just pointed out. There's a lot of factors, a lot of considerations to take into place, especially implementing such a program and finding the staff to do so, and then coordinating all of that logistically. Again, there's ancillary costs there that surround that free nomenclature. So I think that with the staff that's in place right now and the efficiency in which they're operating, we have daily dialogues, Jen and myself, constantly updating, making sure we cross-reference positives, that the contact tracing is being followed through, that we're both making each other aware of certain situations that may happen within the community. I think it really does bear proof that the contacts, the positives aren't actually happening from school students in transmission. What we're seeing is out in social settings. We're seeing households, unfortunately, that have positives, that those household contacts do develop infection. And we're also seeing some of the increased exposures due to sports. And that's just by nature of just more people in front of each other. So having said that, again, the sports teams in town, the contact tracing, the notifications has been phenomenal. We work with Joe, who's been very on top of things as well and very succinct in data and reporting things. The coaches in general have been great to work with. So I think that we're in a position that we really can support where we're at right now, kind of make those recommendations that Jen and Dr. Burrows are talking about now, and kind of just see how things go and be responsive if we need to be.
I think an important piece too, when we talk about resources and we're talking about our nursing staff, and it was mentioned the amount of time that is spent, I can tell you every single weekend of each day of the weekend, principals and nurses and myself, we are in communication because of contact tracing. And if you have this pooled testing, it is then falling on top of the nurses and the administrators that are already pretty much more than full time. Let's just call it what it is, as far as the time that it would take and what it would yield in the end when we do have the ability to have testing when we need it through the partnership with the Foxborough Fire Department. The Department of Ed continues what I've read in their literature, what I've heard in the calls with the commissioner, what I've heard in the different webinars too. They talk about with this, part of the argument is that it's the right time because of technology and because the money is available. So the technology piece, we do have that available to us already with what we're able to do with the fire department. And they have been such great partners when it comes to being in need and needing testing to be done, whether it's with students or staff at those times when it's warranted. As far as the money being available, as I mentioned before, that goes back to the CARES Act funding that what we would see in the second round. And although that money would be twice the amount, or up to 3 times the amount of what we had in the fall, that is still not even coming close to the COVID expenses that we have and what is still to come in that money where it's already earmarked of what our needs are. So Bill, can I just have you speak a little bit to the CARES Act funding? And I think it's important to know that funding and how it's been prioritized and why it's not a matter of it's just sitting there waiting for something such as pooled testing.
I think in the fall, we received CARES Act money in 3 different ways. Part of it came through directly to the town, which was distributed to us, and that's how we bought our one-to-one computers and a lot of our technology upgrades. We received a 102 grant, which was about $500,000, which covered a lot of our labor cost, if you will, for the first half of the year. The original money all had to be spent by 12/31. At least originally, that's what they said, or you'd lose it. And when we were doing that, we basically had teaching positions that we had to put in place to make sure that we could do the coverage, whether it was remotely or in-house. We had some additional sped costs for services for, speech pathologists, for, sped teachers doing remote teaching, for, and we also had we made the decision to hire the extra nurse to be able to give us the coverage for all of the issues that were coming at us. So we've spent all of the original 3 buckets of money we had to get us through the fall. And I think I warned up front that, obviously if this continued, the need would be that we would be a little over $500,000 to cover the second half of the year, from a point of salaries and from a point of those families that chose to go with the remote learning full time through whether it was TECA or through Greenfield. So even though what Dr. Burrows is talking about with the ESSER grant was only about $86,000. So even if we receive 3.5 times that, we're going to receive around $300,000 in that grant. Our remote learning alone for the second half of the year is $261,000 that we're paying out right now. We have about $300,000 in the salaries for the second half of the year. And again, that's even things like bus drivers, because choosing to do the elementary model we have an entire additional set of runs midday to take the kids home to bring in the next group of kids through the process. So we're at $556,000 minimum right now that we're going to spend. We may get lucky and get just over $300,000. We're about $250,000 in the hole right now without additional resources from state or federal for this. And if the numbers that I heard at all are correct, that after the 6th week, we would be probably spending somewhere north of $5,000, maybe as much as $10,000 a week to cover this cost. And if what it's only doing is, obviously, unless you had 100% participation, which I don't think is reasonable to assume you would, what it's doing is potentially creating these clusters of people that you're putting together where one of them might have a problem, and now you've got an issue that you've got to test 25 people to get through this process. As Dr. Berto said, I think we've had a great arrangement with the fire department, which we do pay for the testing. As far as the actual test kits themselves, they have the equipment to do it. But that's much more manageable when we have to send out a team or a group of teachers or, a group of students that we feel are either been in close contact or have created an issue. That's a more manageable cost because it's a group, it's a known entity of people that you're trying to deal with, rather than 2,600 students, 450 employees. The magnitude of that just is so much far greater, and the cost associated with that would obviously be much greater as well.
That's a lot of information. So if there are questions from the committee for either Tom or Jen or myself or Bill regarding this.
I guess, sorry, can people hear me okay?
Thank you, Brett. Yes.
No, I guess my point is in just processing your analysis, and I always appreciate your analysis because it's thorough and well-grounded, is that if I'm understanding you correctly, that the expert view of admin, public health, and the broader town is that the benefit of pool testing is limited in that we're not in danger of going back from the status quo, which is hybrid learning. I guess my point is, if anybody in the district felt that the pool testing would guard us, hedge us against the danger of having to go full remote, which I don't think anyone wants. Well, I shouldn't say anyone, but most people don't want. And I think the bulk of the admin and bulk of the committee don't want. And also that there's no, I guess, value add to it, then I would say, thank you for the analysis, and I go with it. If there is a faction of admin or public health or the broader town that feels like, given numbers as they are now or projected numbers, knowing those are subject to change, that we're in danger of going, because, and I'll use the word, I realize it's a pejorative, but I mean it, that we're in danger of going full remote, then I think there's many people in town, many parents, myself included, would say, no, do it. But if that's not the sense I'm getting from the expert analysis that we have on the panel now, am I correct?
I'll let Tom jump in here. I would say,
Fine.
yes, that we don't feel that we're in danger, and that when we listen to the districts that have gone forward with this, what continually comes out is you need a dedicated person to be able to manage this. Where the Department of Ed says use existing staff, we don't have the capacity to use existing staff for this. It would be having to go to a third-party contractor and then hiring someone from outside in order to manage this. And is there the need? We don't see the need based on our current circumstances and our prevalence rate and the ability through the fire department to be able to have testing when warranted. So Tom, I don't know if you want to jump in.
No, very well said. We do see that although the transmission in the communities has been elevated, we don't see the student spread, the spread within the school itself. So I still really feel that the schools are some of the safest places for our children right now because of the protocols that are in place, and that's kind of bearing fruit. So I would concur with Dr. Roberta's assessment and statement just now. And we are also we are constantly evolving the methods and way we communicate and the methods and way we test and surveil. So we're continuing to work with Jen and her staff this week on enhancements for screening and diagnostics, which may be a little more timely than some of the things we currently have in place, which is even a better reason to kind of stick with the real-time data that we can acquire that's reliable when we feel the need, based on the data, based on the contact tracing, and based on the prevalence rates in the community. I think that I think right now we're in a position where we can actually mitigate anything that may occur in the short term. If we were in a situation where we had a demographic that had a higher number of case counts, I think this would be a different discussion. But for right now, the way things lie, I think we're in a very solid position moving forward.
Well, I'm appreciative of the analysis. I will say that it's, Dr. Barros, it's your latter point and the one that you just supported, Mr. Kenvin, that it resonates most strongly with me, is that it's not a need. And more as a school committee member and as a parent and as just a person in town, if admin and local health officials felt that there was a need and we had an administrative barrier, then that's our job. Like, that's where I'd want to try to find help, because that would set me on edge. But like, if you're saying, like, I understand that it would be a challenge, and that's, I agree with your assessment, Dr. Berdos. But if there were simultaneously, on the other hand, you feeling and those advising you that there was a need for help, then I would be first in line to say, then let's reconfigure some things. But that's not what I'm hearing.
I also think it's important that, we have been doing this testing right along ever since the fire department was able to buy the equipment and have it in-house. So
thank you.
Not like many, I'm sure some districts have that, but I think we're a little bit more fortunate because we've had this for quite a while. Right. And that has protected us from losing entire teaching staffs, from losing groups of students, because when those events happen, we actually can do that rapid test ourselves quickly and have our results and know what to do. So we've been doing testing, in the process here. We're just not testing everybody at all the time. And again, as Jen had said, if you test today and you test negative, there's nothing to say that you won't test positive tomorrow. So I think it's a false kind of sense of security that you got tested and you're all set. But, the reality is when you have the symptoms is when we've got to know whether or not you really are the positive person.
Thank you, Bill. Michelle Raymond. Michelle, I thought you had your hand up.
Yeah, I did. And thank you. And I think many of my points have already been kind of spoken, but I guess my question is that if we were in a situation where we were trying to, instead of preventing ourselves from going remote, but on the other hand, trying to get kids back in all together, at that point in time, it sounds like the pooled testing would be something to reevaluate to see if that would help get the children all back into the classes all at once. That's what I'm taking kind of from what's being presented now, is that we don't really need it now, maybe reevaluate it in the future. Am I correct on that?
I can see that. I think that what I don't want to do is to give someone the idea that if we were participating in the pooled testing, that would mean that we'd be able to go full back in person.
Right, and I wouldn't expect that.
And that's not the case. What our eye is on right now are for vaccines for staff with phase 2 starting in February.
Thank you. Tina?
Wait a second. Okay, there we go. Sorry, not my best thing. If I missed this in passing, please forgive me, but I would like to make sure that the question that was posed by all 3 of the open public comments, the comments we received from Mrs. Pacini and Mrs. Keene and Mrs. Weston were addressed. I think all 3 of them inquired, why couldn't we just go ahead for 6 weeks because it's free. But what I'm hearing is that we would need to hire staff because our staff is currently maxed out, and that you've given a variety of different reasons. But I would like to make sure that we've addressed the questions that were raised by the 3 parents who contacted us today about this, because they're main point to me, their central point was, why can't we just do it for 6 weeks, get us to March, and then, let go of it. And hopefully things will be on the upswing at that point. Although it does seem as though we're trending in the right direction, knock on wood. So I don't know and if we've already addressed this, please forgive me. I find this format a little bit difficult.
No, I think it's a good point. And I know that, talking about what's the downside is what was mentioned as far as with that 6 weeks. It does go back to capacity. It does go back to resources. It goes back to time out of the classroom, although it may seem quickly. Our in-person time with our students is so precious.
Yeah.
The Department of Ed suggests that you can have grades 2 and above do their own nasal swabs for the test, and that you are to use your own resources within the staff. So although it looks that it's 6 weeks and what's the downside, we do see a number of downsides when it comes to capacity and resources, but most importantly, going back to what our prevalence rate is and where our numbers are, and our families are doing such a great job of keeping students home when they're sick. If we've had families, and Jen can speak to this, with students that it's because of what's happening, and then to what Tom had talked about before, in the household. And so we're hearing about positive cases, but the students have not yet come back into the buildings because the parents know. So it goes back again to what is our current context. And I think that's what's really important. And the piece that we have talked about is that ability to have the testing and the resources and technology with the fire department. I don't know, Jen, if you want to add to that.
No, I would just say too, that we are seeing a lot of parents turning positive first, and then their kids are kept home from school. So that is keeping our contact tracing down on the school end. So that's been helpful. Again, the clusters are happening in the families, like Tom had said earlier. The only other point I would say, and this is just, I know I'm a data person. I love numbers. That's, I'm science, I'm math. I just don't know what this data would give us. Like, I always think of, okay, let's collect this data, but in the end, what do we want to do with that? And then to me, this pool testing isn't going to give us a benefit for our community. And then I also have to say, we have been doing some testing when needed, and it's worked out great. But I will say, when people are waiting test results, there's an increased level of anxiety waiting. And if we're going to do this, and I know it would be a routine type of thing, but I mean, I can't tell you how many calls we'll tell them, Tom and I will say, 24 to 48 hours. At that 25-hour mark, we're getting emails, texts, have we gotten the results back? So it's just the unknown, right? Waiting for that test result. So I worry about that a little bit, increasing even with students. I mean, it would be kind of, some kids wouldn't to see kids being tested in a school setting, I think that would increase some kids' anxiety. And right now, I mean, kids are struggling. And I would hate for any kid to be afraid to come to school because of what they're seeing, that kind of thing. So I think that's a valid point to make too.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any further comments from committee members? Well, thank you. Thank you for that presentation. I did want to end by saying that I agree with Brent and understand his question. I appreciate the dialogue. I hear it in my mind as the status quo is where we're at, and it may not have the advantage that might be perceived. But I also hear very clearly that, and I don't wish to react to the newest thing, based upon the track record that we have developed and used in collaboration with the fire department already. I hear that as sound thinking, and I appreciate the advanced work that we have done already for the town of Foxborough, which has placed us in this trajectory. So to me, those things are very compelling to me, and I thank you for that information. Thank you. Hearing no more questions, we will move on to the superintendent's update. And I'm sorry I came in late, everyone. I know I just arrived.
So I don't have that many updates this evening, but I do have a couple of exciting ones, and that's with our laptop distribution for our kindergarten and first graders. So they have been working in first grade on special lessons to be able to get their laptop license. And that's a certificate that's celebrating all of their new technology skills and knowledge and being able to be responsible for taking a laptop home. So those are anticipated to go home with first graders tomorrow. So that's really exciting. And again, just a reminder for the protection plan that it's a prorated cost for $25 for the rest of the school year. And it's really important for families to have that based on what we've already been seeing with some of the damage that we've talked about. So we really encourage families to take advantage of that protection plan. And then kindergarten will be after first grade. The second one, which is what we talked a lot about at the last couple of meetings, the new emergency regulations for student learning time. The implementation announced last week that, or not last week, at the last meeting, that the waiver for elementary was approved. And so there were no changes at the elementary level. However, we did need to, over a 10-day period, find 3 hours at the secondary level. And a lot of work was done by faculty and at each of the middle school and the high school. And that was communicated to parents at the week before last, because that started last Tuesday, where that added a homeroom check-in at the middle school to start the day if it's your asynchronous day or fifth period, or it's the second block at the high school for over that 10-day period. The next kind of update, which is really exciting, and Bill may want to jump in here and give a little bit more specifics, but tomorrow we'll be starting our drop-off at the new entrance at the borough. So that's really exciting. So Michelle McCarthy, the principal over at Borough, sent out an announcement to families with drop-off details and really logistics, and really important for families to follow those procedures, particularly where it's new for our kindergarten families. So they'll be starting to drop off at the new entrance. So Bill, do you want to just provide a little bit more information there?
Yes, this is a 3-phase program that we're doing on the renovation and addition. This is the end of phase 2, which basically completed the 3 kindergarten, 3 first, and 3 second grade classrooms. Up until this point, kindergarten and second grade were in the temporary space in the new gym. So they're now in their final resting spots as far as the classrooms, which are obviously quite bright, a lot of nice light from the outside, colorful on the inside, and well-equipped technology-wise. So I think saw a lot of happy faces there between the teachers and the students. We're entering phase 3, which basically will take us into the remaining classrooms and the cafeteria later on in the spring. So, but one of the feature things was a brand new front entranceway that was built, which has new office space and new entranceway into what will be our media center and technology lab. We have some odds and ends left to do, but we're in pretty good shape there. And the opening of the front of the building actually makes a very different approach as far as the kids are concerned. So should be a little bit easier for them to get into the school now. So.
There was a lot of activity by staff over the weekend to get ready for the kids to come in yesterday. And then I was in all of those classrooms today, and the students and the teachers were so happy to be in their new classrooms. And our third and fourth grade teachers moving over to the temporary classrooms. It's already amazing what they were able to accomplish over the weekend.
Yeah, I got to say, I got to give a lot of applause to the teachers and the custodial staff, because we virtually got the permission to go into the space Thursday night. Thursday night, we moved all of the students out of the temporary space into the new space on Friday night. And on Saturday, we took the balance of the kids that had to go into the new temporary rooms in the gym and moved them. And over the weekend, teachers were there setting up their rooms, getting themselves reorganized. Came Monday morning, quite honestly, I think most people wouldn't have even recognized the fact that they moved. It was really, I was very impressed. I think, I think even the contractor was surprised when we said, we think we could do it in a few days, and quite honestly, we did. So applause to the teachers, applause to the custodial staff, and great move to get us there on to phase 3.
Thank you both for mentioning that. I think that was really important to mention. Any interest from the school committee in having us send a letter of thank you directly to our faculty for all that they've gone through during this renovation thus far? Any interest?
Thanks for mentioning that, Rich. No, I was going to ask the same thing.
Yeah.
I think it's well deserved, and admin, I hope our appreciation from top down, just the level of organization it takes just so that you can till the earth, so that motivated faculty who really just want to get into their new space are going to put forth that Herculean effort. That doesn't happen unless it comes from the top down. So congratulations to everybody.
I agree.
Thank you to Michelle.
Yeah,
Michelle McCarthy too. I think she's been great with her planning and the guidance that she's given her staff, and the reassurance that it will be done and it will be ready so that everybody's calm. So I think it's just been a great team effort, and really impressive all the way around.
Tina, you were saying something as well, Tina?
I agree with everything Brent said, and also Allison. And I think it's a wonderful idea, Richard, to send a letter of thanks from the school committee. I completely authorize you to send one on our behalf, but the staff, everybody's been wonderful, and it has been a challenging year in many ways. It's going to be worth it when the project is done. It's looking great over there. I think at some point it would be wonderful to take the committee on a site visit. We're a little bit closer to being done, but it's very exciting what's happening over at the borough, and I think the whole town, the community, will be very, very proud of it. And Mr. Yutna shouldn't go unthanked in this effort too, because in addition to his day job, which we all know is incredibly time consuming, as chair of the Permanent Municipal Building Committee and the School Building Committee, he is putting in a ton of hours to make sure this project is rolling right along, even with the few bumps in the road that we have had. And I can't say enough about Bill and how he's managing this project with our contractors. So thank you, Bill, and our teachers, and Michelle, and everybody involved, and the kids for their resilience and adaptability as well. So it's very exciting.
Thank you. Well, I'll work on that on behalf of the committee to,
Thanks,
formally
Rich.
thank them. I think it'll be a great thing for them to have.
While we're on the subject of elementary, remember, we've got registration for kindergarten that's taking place right now. So any parents, make sure that they look on their school's website for kindergarten registration. And then the last update that I would say is that fall 2 sports, as far as the floating season that we've been talking about, the Hockomock League has voted to go forward. So we're looking forward to having the floating season with fall 2. And what that means is that we would be offering football, which obviously would be outdoor, volleyball, which would be indoor, winter track would be held almost exclusively outdoors, Wrestling is moved to the spring. The committee is really looking at making that happen, potentially outdoors for wrestling. And that the fall 2 season begins February 22nd. We are still waiting on final sports specific modifications from the MIAA. And we've got a lot of conversations going in on our side with myself and Bill and Joe Cusack and the high school administration when it comes to logistics, particularly when we think about the restrictions that we have, even with outdoor, and you think about the number of student athletes, particularly with football. So there's a lot of planning, a lot of consideration there. We're working on that, but that starts February 22nd.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the superintendent's update from members? Great, thank you. Next on the agenda, approval of the 2021-22 school calendar. Dr. Berdos, do you want to introduce anything?
Sure, just as a reminder, so you were presented with 2 different calendars at the last meeting, the traditional calendar, which starts for us after Labor Day. That would be a September 7th start for students, with their last day, barring no snow days, being June 17th. Or if we have to, as a reminder by state law, build in 5 snow days. We will not have the opportunity next year as of, just as a reminder, this year, districts can have remote learning days instead of the traditional snow day if they choose. That will not be an option in the future. So currently right now, as an example, we've had 1 snow day, but where the student learning time, it's kind of confusing that terminology is used for both, is 170 days for students. We currently have with our students, with our June 16th last day of school, 173 days. So we have wiggle room, if you will, where we've had 1 snow day. So we still have actually a couple of extra days still with students with 170 days where we have more on the calendar as it is. I bring that as just as an example, as a tangential note, because if we were to have our 5 snow days in next school year's calendar with that traditional start after Labor Day, it brings us to June 27th. There's an additional holiday that goes into effect next year, which is June 19th. If we were to start before Labor Day, which would be a student start of August 31st, which is actually 1 day different than what we would have done this current school year. If we had a typical year, we would have done the same. They would start August 31st. Their last school day would be June 14th or June 22nd if we had up to the 5 snow days on the calendar. So we'll need a vote from the committee because that is one of the things that you do approve as far as the calendar. I will just lastly say that the Foxborough Education Association, our teachers association, their preference is to have learning start sooner and to start before Labor Day, because learning it's a little bit more conducive in early September than it is in late June. And our administration also, that would have been our recommendation, but again, it's up to the committee for you to make that decision.
Thank you, Dr. Berdos. Brent?
I move to adopt the earlier start calendar per the recommendations of admin and Foxborough Teachers Association and my own common sense support. That's it. No more words.
A second from anyone? Tina has seconded. Brent moved and seconded the earlier start of August 31st for students. Further discussion, Tina?
Just before I mentioned this at our last meeting, but just before we vote, I found it interesting. I think I said at the last meeting that this was a hot button issue back in, I think it was 2015 when we debated this. And I remember we waited the 2 weeks in between meetings to vote on the calendar. And I probably fielded 10 phone calls and we got emails, and I haven't heard from anybody. And I think people just would like to know what the calendar is going to be. Plus, I think there is a comfort level and a realization that the pre-Labor Day start really does benefit our students and our teachers, and there's an acknowledgement of that, and I think we've gotten accustomed a little bit more to that than we were 5 years ago, even, or 6 years ago. So just as a point of reference, I guess.
Thank you, Tina.
We have lots of other things to be concerned about these days, besides, not that the school calendar isn't important, it's incredibly important, but different focus on things. So anyway, with that said, I'm done.
Thank you. Rob or Michelle, any further comment? Thank you. Seeing none, move the question at this point. I'm going to do a roll call vote now that we're all in virtual. Roll call vote, which the motion on the table is for the calendar that begins student learning on August 31st, before Labor Day. Michelle?
Approve.
Yes. Brent?
Approved.
Approved. Rob?
Aye.
Aye. Tina?
Aye.
And me, aye as well. 5-0. Thank you very much, Dr. Bertos. 5-0 for the earlier start. Next on the, thank you, everyone. Next on the agenda is the FY22 budget public hearing and a vote of a recommendation of the budget. Any questions or discussion about the budget at this time? Dr. Bertos or Mr. Yukna, anything at all?
Well, this is an update.
I'll just start and just say, just as a reminder, that the budget is built on being student-centered. And I think that just as a reminder, it's one that it's our blueprint for improving student learning. It's one that's going to be able to provide the level of services that we do currently for our students, keeping reasonable class sizes, providing the services when it comes to technology and special education, and that high level of education for our students. So there's not new positions in the budget, and that it really is one that reflects our priorities for the district.
I think the second part of that is that this is based on what we would consider a typical year. It's not based on any kind of a COVID hybrid year where we would have those additional costs. So what we're bringing forward to the town is what we would anticipate post-COVID September opening with kids in class full-time and moving forward. Obviously, if that does not become the case, then we will have, other financial issues to have to deal with. Sure. But at this point, it doesn't seem fair to be asking the town for additional money on something that we don't know for a fact will happen. So it's a traditional year budget as we would have had, or as we actually have for this year, even though we're spending, obviously above that.
Thank you.
That's good.
Any questions or comments from other committee members?
No.
Tina.
I just wanted to note that last Tuesday, Mr. Yukna, Dr. Bertos, Rob, and myself did a Zoom call with the AdCom liaisons, Dan Peterson, Larry Uwe, and Brad Halter. And we spent a good amount of time on Zoom with them, going over the budget, Bill answered all of their questions about the budget and also the CIP, which we're going to get to next. And correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but the school department goes before the AdCom next week on February 3rd.
Correct.
I certainly hope that, I'm assuming we'll all be on Zoom like this, and I hope that it will be televised. I'm not sure. We didn't ask that question, but I hope it'll be televised for the community. I would hope so. I think we were last year, at least some of the meetings, as we got deeper in March. Do you recall that? I hope so anyway. This is the fourth school committee meeting that we've talked about the budget. I feel as though we have given a really detailed, hard look at it, line by line. I have all the confidence in Mr. Yukna's budgeting abilities, and my personal opinion on the budget as a school committee member, and having looked at these budgets now for 12 years, including my time on the advisory committee. is that this is a budget that provides the best possible education within the fiscal conservatism that we have here in Foxborough. And I think we give a really good value for our dollar. Obviously, if the revenue doesn't come in, the school committee will have to make hard decisions, but this is the budget we need to continue with the level of education for our students at the class sizes that our community wants and has expressed desire for, and at a level that, you know, we are all happy with. And yeah, I know it's a big number, but you know, there's only an increase of 0.1 full-time employee in this budget. So, and all of our expenses are level funded. And I think, you know, I want to emphasize that as well as we go on, you know, to vote on this tonight. So, and I would also note that I haven't had anybody contact me personally about the budget. So, you know, I think that does indicate a certain degree of confidence. Anyway, I don't know what the rest of the committee feels, but just before we vote, there it is.
Thank you, Tina. Any other members wish to comment on the budget discussion? Rob?
Yeah, I just want to build on what Tina said. I think that the administration and Mr. Yukna, in particular, Dr. Bertos, have consistently demonstrated fiscal responsibility through the years that I've been, either through the years that I was on the advisory committee and then the past couple of years with the school committee. So like Tina said, they look at every 1/10 of an hour for resources. There is everything here is based on service level funding. And I think that we can put this budget together forward with a lot of confidence that we will be able to execute on this budget successfully and maintain the quality of our schools, you know, as it is, as they are line itemed.
Thank you, Rob. Michelle, anything at all?
Nothing new. You know, I concur with everything that people have said so far. So thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Brent?
My only add is that within the budget that's being presented, and I agree with everything my colleagues here have said, there's still obviously room for movement within the budget for, you know, so for folks who are on CPAC, folks who are on PTO, parents who have concern, at least in my experience with the district and the admin in the district, is they're listening. So keep advocating for that which you need. And there hasn't been a year in my few years doing this between AdCom and school committee that shifts internally haven't been made when administration here's a good clarion argument that kids need to be served in a certain way. So I support the budget as presented.
Thank you.
As everybody knows, within that, things can shift as needs arise. So that's all I'll say.
Well, thank you very much. I would comment and echo what everyone says. I think the budget's been detailed appropriately. We've met for numerous weeks, understanding the detail of the budget. I understand this budget to be responsible to what we do and how we staff our building appropriately. And then I also do think this budget supports a major expectation of this community for an outstanding school system. And it is the cost of doing education and supporting education at this high level. So thank you very much. I will ask for a motion from the committee, but before you do such, I wanted to mention that there'll be 2 votes on this entire budget tonight. One budget represents the highest majority of the budget. That'll be the first vote and motion I'm asking for. The second motion will be a motion for a very small portion of the budget, which I'm going to sign off the meeting and recuse myself based upon my employment. So I would ask for a motion, and Bill, Mr. Yukno or Dr. Bertos, any special wording for the first motion as I've articulated?
Yes, I don't know if Tina was able to see it, but I sent a copy of what should be motioned, so you should have that.
I'm sorry, I may have missed that in my, so Tina, if you have that in front of you, I would love your reading of that motion, and thank you, Mr. Yukna.
I'd like to move the school committee vote to approve the FY22 school budget as presented less the athletic department expenses of $239,400 for a total of $38,376,614.
Thank you. Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Brent has seconded. Moved by Tina, seconded by Brent, as stated. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. First, Michelle.
Aye.
Brent.
Aye.
Rob.
Aye.
Tina.
Aye.
And me, aye. That's a 5-0 vote for the motion as proposed by Tina. At this time, I'm going to sign off the meeting for a moment. I will return in a few moments when the next motion is completed.
Thank you.
That's how you're supposed to do it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Tina, do you also have wording for the second motion?
I am on it.
All right.
I'd like to move the school committee vote to approve the FY22 athletic expense budget as presented in the amount of $239,400.
Thank you. Any second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Reuter.
Sure.
Any questions or comments before we vote?
I don't have any.
No? Thank you. Then Michelle?
Aye.
Okay. Brent?
Aye.
Tina?
Aye.
And myself is an aye as well. So that the second item is approved 4-0-0. Thank you guys very much. And now we can welcome Mr. Pearson back to the meeting.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate that. Next on the agenda is the approval of the FY22 capital improvement plan. Mr. Yerkna, probably? Any discussion, sorry. Mr. Yerkna or Dr. Berto, if you'd like to start with anything you'd like to say to us.
We're always waiting for Bill.
Yeah.
We'll let Bill start on this one.
Thank you.
So the CIP budget proposal is similar to past years, except for the fact that we didn't get 2 buses last year. We are requesting 4 for this year. The other thing is we didn't receive copiers last year. We're still requesting the same amount we normally would have requested, which means we, potentially still are a little bit in a hole there. And I think I noted this last meeting or with the AdCom, but we have 1 copier that we use at the guidance counselors in the high school, which is a rather expensive copier because it does the trifold and gives us the ability to do the mailers out to parents, report card type things, all of that. And quite honestly, it's died. So, it was the risk that we knew we were taking when they didn't fund copiers this year, but there's really not much I can do about it until we get some funding. So, and I'm really I'm in a position right now where I don't even feel I could spend money, assuming I could cut it from someplace else just because of my concerns relative to the COVID expenses. So that's why, they're back on there. So again, typical, as far as buses, the 2 normal ones plus the 2 from last year, computer software and hardware for $100,000, 4 copiers for $40,000, and the first year of a 3-year proposal to replace music instruments. It rounds out the entire total at $535,510.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions from the school committee members about the budget, the capital improvement plan? Tina?
Yeah, so when we met with the AdCom liaisons, we had a really lengthy talk about, why we're asking for the 4 buses and sort of the potential down the road, for lack of a better expression, consequences of not getting the 4 buses. And I wonder if we could just address that a little bit before we vote on it, just for anyone who may be watching at home. I know it's a real concern, right, Bill? So
yeah. So basically one of the advantages of the town running its own bus system is, and there are numerous ones, but one of the advantages that our cost is lower than what the third-party vendors are charging other towns to do the same type of service. There's obviously tremendous amount of flexibility because, again, having our own buses when it comes to special routing for field trips, athletic trips, that type of thing, we have the capacity to do that. And I think in general, one of the bigger items that actually most people don't think about, but because we're a municipality, we don't pay road taxes on fuel. So all of our fuels is considerably cheaper than what most people are paying at the pump when they go through the process, and what the third-party vendors pay, therefore transfer that cost on to the communities in their contracts. We aren't looking to make a profit like a third-party vendor does when it's obviously doing the same work. So that's why our process is cheaper than what's going on in the outside as far as contracts. It is also one of the only reasons we were able to do elementary on a in-person 5 days a week rotation of half days was because we had the buses to control, whether or not we could bring them in as extra routes and stuff. So huge advantages to us. Disadvantages: if you don't continue a process which the town has had for many years of replacing a couple buses a year, you will eventually end up in a situation where you don't have the buses on the road. We always need to have a few backup buses because buses do go down for service, whether it's, brake jobs, oil jobs, whatever it has to be done. So you have to have a few extra buses. Right now, we're effectively 2 buses down from last year that we really don't want to have on the road. One, I don't believe the DOT would pass for next year anyway, so it won't be going on the road. So if we don't start to stay back into that process of replacing, similar to what we've done with the computer equipment, if you don't stay in the process, you create a bigger hole to try to get yourself out of in the future. And I think it also puts the transportation service at risk, which is the biggest part. I can't go outside and start, well, I can, but it's going to add cost to the town as well if I had to go outside and start picking up a couple routes from a private vendor because I don't have the buses to put on the road. So I think that's where we have to be cognizant of. The process is a cost-saving process. And just because, we were nervous of last year and we're nervous of this year, it's not one that you can just walk away and say, we don't have that expense. We'll have to wait till a different time comes along. So very important to keep it up.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Actually, there was one more thing. We put the music department request back in the CIP. And I know we talked about it when you presented the CIP originally, but maybe just a little bit of review on that for folks who are watching at home as we, vote on it tonight.
Thanks, Tina.
Sure. The much of the equipment that they're talking about, they prioritized for the seriousness or the condition of the equipment not being able to be repaired. A lot of this is expensive equipment that, a student would not be able to support. Most families would not be able to support themselves. And that the town has always owned within the music program. The total proposals for just about $175,000 over 3 years. We're looking at about 67 for this year. And again, it's been prioritized by the music department for which instruments are the most needed based on the 3-year breakdown. As I said last year, we had another item on there, which is the reason it's dropped in value, was we had choral risers that were a real safety issue at the high school. They had kind of been overused, if you will, for years. Right. We were able at the end of last year with the funding that we had available before we turned the rest of the money back to the town to buy those because it was a safety issue. So we were able to take those off the list. I think you all know it's one of our biggest issues is always safety, no matter what it is. And in this particular case, that it translated into these choral risers being replaced as part of our process. So,
thank you for that. I'd like to chime in. I have wanted to speak a little bit about this because I certainly can. I have actually personally developed budgets identical to this in my career as a music educator and the director of music myself. I wanted to echo what Ms. Yurkin has said. I want to first begin by the support of our music program in this community. To me, is quite important, and I think to many, this music program in this community is not average in any way, shape, or form. It's incredibly special, and it's one of the finest music programs, I believe, in this country. And I say that from personal experience and some exposure to music. Secondly, the proposal here that's being brought forward is to develop the full instrumentation and supporting of all the students in the program. The instruments, Mr. Yukna said quite clear, are offered to students to fill out the ensembles, to create the excellence, and to play the music that is on there. And the only way that you're going to have a tuba in tune is to have a tuba that is of good quality. And tubas are not inexpensive, and as are upright basses and cellos. So I'm in full support of this music budget. I appreciate the music department seeking out the best opportunity and stratifying that over 3 years, which is exactly what they have done here. So I think it's a very sound and wise judgment for a program of this caliber. That's my certain comment on music. Brent?
I'll start with music, then I'll move to buses. Rich, I agree with everything you said, and you're much more of an expert than I am. I'm just going to say it in a different way, which is, if a tuba lasts 15 years with a lot of kids playing it, we bought ours 25 years ago. I mean, come on. I think when you put it that way, it's common sense that the town should realize that because we bought usable quality tubas, and I'm just using tubas as an example. Risers also comes to mind, Bill. But we bought quality tubas over 25 years ago, and they've lasted 10 years longer than they're supposed to because we have quality staff who are trained, who care, and who diligently do this stuff on their off unpaid hours to take care of this equipment. We owe them. We just do. As a town, we do. We're 10 years overdue on these things, and now we're asking for it. When it comes to the buses, it's good money after bad. We need to get the kids to school, and I voted in favor of all of our budget changes last year and all the CIP changes last year, which cut out a couple of buses. And that was whatever. It was an uncertain time, and it's but I went with the recommendation of Dr. Barros in this because the whole town was uncertain. But we need these buses on the road. No one, I don't believe anyone in this town is actually comfortable running kids to school on things that are unsafe or marginally going to be passed by the state to be safe. And it's just due, it's time. So anyway, I wholeheartedly support the CIP budget. It is bigger than what the town is used to from the school district over the last 2 years, but that's frankly only because the school district has tightened its belt. It has. And so anyway, I'm wholeheartedly behind it.
Thank you, Brent. Any further comments? Seeing none and hearing none, would someone like to motion approval of the CIP budget?
I have the motion right here, so I would be happy to do that.
Thank you.
I would like to move the school committee vote to approve the 2022 school department CIP budget in the amount of $535,510 for the purchase of 4 77 passenger school buses, computer software and hardware upgrades, and replacement 4 copiers in year 1 of a 3-year proposal to replace music department instruments.
Thank you. Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Michelle, thank you, Michelle. Motion by Tina, seconded by Michelle. Any continued or further discussion? Seeing none, hearing none, I'd like to do a roll call vote again on the motion for the CIP budget as stated by Tina. Michelle?
Aye.
Brent?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Tina?
Aye.
And aye as well. Thank you very much. A 5-0 vote on the CIP budget. Thank you all. Next is a vote on the technology revolving account authorization that Mr. Yukna has been miles and miles of work on.
So I appreciate your patience on this one because it's obviously taken us a while to get here. But again, after working with state legislators, we've come to the conclusion that the best way to do this is to go to town meeting in May with an article that actually puts together a revolving fund for this technology service fund. And that, you know, I'm working right now with the town to actually create the appropriate wording for it. But I guess I wanted two things from the school committee. One, your approval that you're willing to put that article forward on the May town meeting. And the second thing is you typically on a revolving account have to have a dollar limit or cap. In talking to both Aaron and the town side, my opinion is that $100,000 cap, because if you took every parent and they were to put in the money, the $40 each, that's just about, you know, just under what they would come in at. That also gives us a little latitude if we carry money from one year to the next on buying equipment. We don't have to buy it at the end of the year. We can wait for either better deals, you know, as far as replacement parts and you know, new units when they're broken type thing. So if we obviously maxed it out, we would have a situation where we'd have to spend it without, you know, having the ability to get the best deals out of things. So all I'm looking for is a vote that you know, agree and approve this article being posted on the Maytown warrant with $100,000 cap.
So moved. Do I need to say more words, Mr. Chair?
Thank you very much. Brent has moved the wording as stated by Mr. Yukna. A second on that motion.
I'll second.
I saw Rob. Sorry. It's not a race. If you all go the same, we just have to say someone. So
It's totally fine.
It's not a race unless Rob wins.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah, he texted me that. No, I'm joking. So Rob, seconded by Rob Canfield. Any further discussion about the motion as presented for the technology revolving account to be presented at town meeting?
No.
Hearing and seeing none, we'll do another roll call vote for the technology revolving account. Michelle?
Aye.
Brent?
Thankful aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Tina?
Aye.
And I as well. That's a 5-0 vote for the technology revolving account. Thank you. Next is acceptance of donation for the Ahern Drama Club. Anything, Dr. Bertos?
Sure. So this is always exciting when we have parents come forward or organizations to present a donation for you to accept. And this is one for the Ahern Middle School Drama Club for $500. And it is from the Rumseys, Roger and Cynthia Rumsey. And it would go towards the middle school student activity account for the purpose of the drama program.
Thank you for that. And I'd like to have a motion for someone to accept the donation with gratitude of $500 for the Ahern Middle School Drama Club.
I'll make the motion.
There we go. So I have everyone racing and now we've all finished and we're all tired.
We're so polite.
Tina motion, seconded by?
Second.
Michelle. Michelle has the second. Any further discussion on the $500 donation? Seeing none and hearing none again, we'll roll call vote this as well. Michelle?
Aye.
Brent?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Tina?
Aye.
And I myself as well. 5-0 vote for the donation. Thank you. And again, if you would, with gratitude to the Rumseys. Thank you, Dr. Bertos. And I think we've come to the end of our agenda. Other matters. Dr. Bertos, would you like to begin?
Sure, I'll start and I'll let Bill jump in here if he wants to add a couple of extra words. This evening at 7 o'clock when our school committee meeting started, there was something else that was taking place at 7 o'clock. And that was an awards ceremony that was recognizing our manager for the cafeteria over at the Taylor School, Jane Rice. So we had talked about her recognition and not only being recognized as the Massachusetts Manager of the Year, but then being forwarded as the New England Manager of the Year. And I just think, that, you know, it's great. There was a big ceremony virtually, of course, recognizing her. And it was really focused on the work that she demonstrated that had to do with nutrition, had to do with even operations and communications and marketing and all of that. And when we think about the towers that have been done as far as growing food and some of the things that she's had trickle over into other schools. So we're really excited that Jane was recognized this evening, and we were there with her in spirit. So I don't know, Bill, if you wanted to add anything else.
Yeah, no, I did receive a memo or a little note back from Jane after a congratulations to her. And one of the things she basically said was that this was just going to be a short part-time stint for her. And obviously many years later, she loves it. She's really enjoying what she's doing. She loves dealing with the kids and bringing new things to them. As Dr. Berto said, she was the one who got us to cut a hole in a wall to put a window so that the kids could see the growing plants within her area, and other schools have caught on to that and doing the same. So I think it's really good. I think as a community, the food service department really is a team. They do a lot of things together and they all learn from each other. And I think Jane has really exemplified what you really want to have in a leader in one of those programs. So I think we're very fortunate.
Oh, thank you. So well said. And thank you for telling us about that. Thank you.
Anything as far as other matters? I feel like I've spoken a lot this evening. When you get to Allison, we'll let her talk about professional development on Friday. That's a reminder that we do not have students in school on Friday.
Allison, would you like to go next?
Certainly. Yes, thank you, Dr. Bertos and Richard. It is exciting that we have our Professional Development Day this Friday. We have a very robust menu of choices for our teachers to select from. In the morning, everyone will be having a district-wide keynote that's really focused on our work around equity and social and emotional learning, particularly in this time that we're in. It's more important than ever. So we're really excited about that, followed by a must-do where people will be in their departments and their content areas. And then the afternoon has choices that include things, again, around equity, SEL, technology, self-care, all kinds of wonderful choices for them. And we even have some really big name people joining us. Greg Tang from the math world. We have Angela Myers from UMatter. We have Ken Williams, who is our keynote speaker. We have Dr. Larry Epstein with us and Alan Bloom. So there are lots of specialized things. So we're really proud of the day, and people are excited and get energized to power through the rest of the year. Did I leave anything out, Dr. Bertos?
I think we'll have to come back at the next meeting and then give you a little bit more information based on all of the different options that teachers have and what Allison has done with the must-dos and the may-dos and following along what we do with the workshop model with students and that with staff through professional development. I mean, kudos to her and to the Professional Development Committee because it's something that has really taken off. We know choice is important for students, but it's also important for adults. And to be able to have that selection and a robust selection, it is really exciting.
And I forgot that the Mass Youth Coalition will also be doing some sessions on supporting LGBTQ students. So we're really excited for them to be doing some live sessions too. So everything that people could want, I think we have on the menu. And you're right, Dr. Bertos, the choice is welcome. So thank you.
Hey, thanks, Allison. And again, I'm not sure thanks is enough because developing the curriculum and all that goes into that to plan a professional development day for our staff is truly extraordinary in the education world. So I know I certainly recognize it and appreciate it. And I think we all do on the school committee. And I do think the teachers appreciate the hard work that goes into it. It makes a difference for them. The time put into proper professional development reaps huge benefits for the faculty's stability, comfort, and learning. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And we have wonderful faculty who are stepping up and planning sessions for their colleagues too, which should also be mentioned. And that we're really fortunate to have such gifted practitioners that we can all learn from. So it's great. Thank you.
Well said.
Plus, can I say, Mr. Pearson, that both Dr. Mello and Dr. Bertos use the term must do in terms of their rhetoric with teachers, which is the same thing that all teachers use in their classrooms every day, which I think it shouldn't go unnoticed for families at home that these two professionals are teachers at their core, and they walk the walk as well as talk the talk. So I understood that as a teacher. That was great. Thanks.
Thanks, Brent.
Well said. Other matters, anyone else? Tina?
I noticed today on our Foxborough School Nutrition page, which is always wonderfully kept up by Janice Watt, that she had posted that the USDA is increasing the pandemic EBT benefit by approximately 15%, providing more money for low-income families, millions of children missing meals due to school closures. If you believe you'd be eligible, there are meal applications, and she has that up on her Facebook page. I'm sure it's on the Foxborough Food Services site on our school website as well. But this is additional money that would go directly to families who need it, in addition to the meals that are provided every Wednesday. And, you know, I know a lot of people are in need in this community and elsewhere. So I just wanted to get that out there to folks who might be listening.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rob, I think, Rob, were you going to say something? I thought I saw your hand, but maybe not.
No, I just wanted to say that I continue to be incredibly grateful for all of the work that all of the educators and administrators and all the supporting resources are doing, and the families, just to make this, you know, as successful a school year as possible. And you know, every meeting I walk away with learning something new and being incredibly proud to be associated with Foxborough Public Schools. So thank you all. Just very, very grateful.
Right on. Thank you, Rob. Michelle, anything?
I just feel like I keep mirroring everyone tonight and trying to find my unmute button. So yeah, I don't have anything more to add. I do want to say kudos that we've that the school has made it halfway through, and you know, and also made it through the holidays without having to make any major changes. So kudos to you again. Thank you very much. We all appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I wanted to mention one of our students, Sophia Davis, who's a junior in the Foxborough High School music program, very good saxophone player herself, is sponsoring a kind of a virtual seminar, virtual masterclass with a great jazz artist, Alexa Tarantino. And this is going to be this Thursday night from 7 to 8:30. Sophia developed this, found it, and put it together all on her own. And the masterclass benefits My Life, My Choice. And I just wanted to read quickly what that is. And this is on Sophia's Facebook page advertising this. My Life, My Choice is a groundbreaking, nationally recognized leader in the fight to end the commercial sexual exploitation of children. They offer a unique continuum of survivor-led services, including survivor mentoring, intensive case management, prevention education, leadership development, professional training, and advocacy. So I just thought it should be mentioned that Sophia went off on her own to create this. As for how you could access this, if you were hearing this, you could find Sophia probably on Facebook. I'm not 100% sure about Twitter or not. You could find the Foxborough Music Association, which is linked on Facebook to her page. And you could try to look it up as Jazz for Justice with Alexa Tarantino. I'm sure she would like support of anyone that wishes to do that and support the cause and her efforts.
I did see it on Twitter, Richard. I think it was retweeted by the Foxborough Music Association. Yeah.
Thank you so much for saying that. So if anyone hears this, and there are tickets, I think they're $25 each on Eventbrite, and you could certainly attend it and or support the cause and or both. Thank you. I have no others. Anyone else? Hearing none and seeing none, a move to adjourn by anyone?
So moved.
Brent moves, seconded by Rob. Seconded by Rob.
Michelle, I thought you had it.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote to adjourn, please. Michelle?
Aye.
Brent?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Tina?
Aye.
And me, aye as well. 5-0 to adjourn. Good night, everyone. Thank you all.
Night. Thank
Good
you.
night. Night.